SHV Energy, a leading global distributor of off-grid energy, have recently established Futuria Fuels to accelerate the on-purpose production of renewable liquid gas and explore the role of hydrogen and carbon capture. Renewable liquid gas, such as bio-LPG, RLPG and RDME, is produced from renewable and recycled carbon feedstocks. Futuria Fuels are all in on sustainable fuels for off-grid, with over 20 R&D collaborations across the globe.
Good morning and welcome to you all to the next edition of the Statistical Report of the EBA. This is one of our major publications where the whole EBA team works diligently on over the full year. But we are very thankful that this comes together with the contributions of the national associations, the government, the various governments, the experts, researchers, also industry leaders who are all contributing to this report. And did you know this is the 13th edition with ever more data, ever more insights, increased granularity. And this will make that, for example, we can make more informed investments, decisions, and develop robust policy frameworks. I also would like to thank our sponsors. You just saw the AB and SHV Energy for their support. Let me also go to the report itself. The report is available for free for our members. And should you not yet be a member, of course, you can also purchase this report as well. Having said all that, it is also good to know that we have more than 700 registrants for this webinar. And it's also good to just say that some important ones before we start the webinar. One is, of course, that this webinar will be recorded. It will be shared with you, as will also be the slides with the various data which is on there. So let me go to the agenda. We have just over 1 hour, and we'll start with a keynote from the European Commission, after which the presentation will be made on the statistical report for 2023, moderated by Julia Cancian, and the insights will be shared by Mieke de Korte and Marina Pastoris. Then after that, you will have your question and answers, which will be moderated by Julia. Now here, I'd like to make the note that you are very much welcomed to put any questions you have in the question and answer box this tool provides. So please do, and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end of the webinar. With all that, I would like to actually give the floor, or yeah, I forget one thing, because we would like to increase actually the interaction even more, and we would like to hear from you. So here it is. We would like to know, how long have you been active in the biogases industry? And here it is important, and you can click already on there and select where you've been, but it's important to get an idea, especially to see how the increased employment is going forward. And we need to make sure that we sustain the growth of our sector from labor perspective as well. And this gives, although it is not very statistical, but it does give us a nice idea and insight on what the listeners of this webinar are. So here you see, actually, and this is much in line to what it is expected. I'm glad to see 28% are less than 1 year active within the industry, 1 to 3 years, 32%. So 60% is relatively short within the industry, which actually is logic showing or showing also the growth of our sector, which we are going through. Important that we make sure that all the newcomers which are there, we train and appropriate with all the needed tools to make sure the sector can grow sustainably. And with that, I see Edith is already there. I'm very much pleased, Edith, to have you. For you, the floor. You are the deputy head of the Commission of DG Ener, dealing with the decarbonization and sustainability of energy sources. Very much welcome and looking forward to your speech.
Thank you very much, Herman, and good morning to all online, and also those of you who will watch this recording afterwards. I'm very happy to be able to give this short keynote speech, and I'm also looking forward to the statistical report, which we're going to get presented later on. We had the chance to get a sneak preview already, and I have to say there are quite some impressive figures in this report, and we're looking forward to that. But before that, I would just like to put biogas and biomethane a bit into the context of European energy policies. And in that context, let me recall a couple of key instruments which support the development of biogas and biomethane, at least EU instruments. The first one is, and this is very dear to my heart because I've been working on this for the last years, is the revised Renewable Energy Directive, which actually entered into force about 2 weeks ago. With this directive, the EU has set itself a minimum target of 42.5% of renewables in 2030, with the aim to actually reach 45%. This achievement will be done through the contribution of member states. So it's not a national target, but an EU level target. And this means also that member states will have to increase their ambitions quite considerably. With this increase of domestic targets on the one hand of deployment of renewable energy, and also on the other hand, the improvement of energy as part of the European Green Deal, the EU is leading actually the way globally on the energy transition. This was also mirrored last Saturday afternoon when our President von der Leyen, launched at COP28 the global pledge on tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency. This pledge, which was initiated also by the EU, was endorsed in the meantime by more than 100 countries. Actually, the last figures I saw, it was around 130 countries. And so this gives another boost to the ambitions related to renewables. In parallel with the geopolitical and energy crisis generated by Russia's war of aggression against the Ukraine, the EU has also set itself some measures, or has set out measures in REPowerEU, how we actually can replace fossil fuels in our energy mix. There we've seen again in these difficult times, we've seen again that sustainable and circular used domestic energy sources are a key tool for our energy independence and for our security of supply. And one of the measures in this context was actually an aspirational target of 35 billion cubic meters BCM of annual biomethane production in the EU by 2030. This is an ambitious target, but it is, as we always say, a reachable target. But as you have seen, we have quite high targets on renewables, quite high policy aspirations, and therefore we need not only all kinds of renewable energy in this mix, but we also need all hands on deck, as we say in English, to achieve these targets in 2030. So it's very clear for us that sustainably produced biogas and biomethane, but also together with other renewable gases like renewable hydrogen. These are all part of our future decarbonized energy portfolio. And this is particularly important when it comes to biogas and biomethane to also address decarbonization solutions in remote, geographical and rural areas and in sectors which are difficult to electrify. In the past, I mean, we've already seen some figures from Eurostat, but they are not yet covering 2022. If you look at the 2021 figures, and there I have to look at my notes, Eurostat has recorded 2.37 BCM of biomethane injected into the grid and 0.14 BCM used in transport. This is a total of approximately 2.5 BCM of biomethane use in the EU. This biomethane, again, if you look at the energy balances for 2021, was injected to the grid in 14 member states already. And the figures we have from Eurostat show that the largest producer of biomethane were Germany, Denmark, France, the Netherlands, and Italy. These 5 member states together are actually covering 96% of all the biomethane production injected into the grid in 2021. But as you heard before, we have quite high ambitions, quite high targets to achieve in 2030. So we have to really increase the production, not just of renewables in general, but of biomethane in particular as well. In order to do this, the European Commission has published last year in May a biomethane action plan. And one of the key actions of this biomethane action plan was actually the creation of the biomethane industrial partnership, which brings together policymakers, not just the European Commission, but also national policymakers, industry, and also other stakeholders in launching in creating the framework, in setting out the framework on how biomethane can actually be produced in a sustainable way and increasingly. And there, I very much welcome the EBA's contribution in this partnership, together also with other industries, because without the industry, we are not able to achieve any of our targets. So we're very grateful to the industry participation in this work. If you look at what we have actually managed to do in this first year, we see that there has been a very good exchange on many issues already over this last year. And we've already seen quite interesting technical reports also, which came out from this work of the BIP, of the Biomethane Industrial Partnership. If I just would like mention 2 things. The one is the joint work with the member states. We all work together with our national, so you all work together with your national member states, and we work together with the 27 EU member states to see how we can actually achieve a stable and enabling policy framework that would further de-risk and also incentivize biomethane production. In order to support this process, the Commission or my colleagues have prepared so-called biomethane country fishes for 24 member states, meaning those member states where we see a reasonable potential of biogas and biomethane, or in particular biomethane production. And for these countries, we actually had a look, what is the current level of biogas and biomethane production, and what could be the sustainable biomethane potential. We have published those country fishes to encourage and support further cooperation, not just among the member states, but also with industry stakeholders, and also in light of the ongoing process to update the national energy and climate plans. On these plans, we have received so far 21 draft national energy and climate plans, and all but one are actually mentioned biomethane as one policy measure going forward. Unfortunately, it's not possible, it's very difficult to calculate the cumulative target coming out of these plans, because most member states have not quantified those very clearly. However, The drafts are publicly available on our website, so I invite you to check our website if you're interested in what the drafts are actually setting out on biomethane. Some of them actually include quite good sections on biomethane, and therefore I believe it might be a quite good read for many of you. When we look at what we are witnessing actually on the ground, we see a lot of, over the last year, a lot of increasing investments in new biomethane projects. Among these are very good example of implementing actually innovative business models of waste-based biomethane production in the EU. This is also something where which we very much welcome, as it is in line with our policies of sustainability, a circular economy, etc. These examples actually very well illustrate what's the real added value of the biomethane value chain. So not just a decarbonization tool, but also a model to integrate different EU policies, different value streams into one, into energy production. And this would then allow also a total zero or even a negative greenhouse gas emissions footprint for the future. But we should also keep in mind that achieving the 35 PCM by only new capacity will be not only costly, but will be also difficult in the time frame we are looking at. Therefore, we should also focus or put a focus on upgrading biogas to biomethane to make it more cost-effective and sustainable for member states. Before I finalize, I just wanted to also inform you that we are working on a revision of Annexes 5 and 6 of the Renewables Directive. The later includes, so Annex 6 includes greenhouse gas emissions from different biogases productions. And there the novelty in the methodology is actually recording also biomethane leakages along the production chain. We have been working together also with the EBA on this, and some member states where this already done. And this would also lead not just to economies of scale, but will also contribute to the climate. So I'm looking forward now to actually seeing the figures which the European Biogas Association will present for 2022. We'll also soon get the official data for the EU27 from Eurostat. So it will be very important or very interesting for us to look at what is available in the EU and what is available in the countries beyond the EU, which also have a substantial biogas and biomethane potential, such as Switzerland, the UK, or Norway, and so that we can see where we stand in the EU and how we can actually work with other countries on this issue going forward. In that sense, thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll hand over to Julia to moderate the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edith, for your keynote, for your encouraging word, but also for the input and the work that the European Commission is undertaking in these months on the biogases in general. I see that the Q&A box is in full steam, and this is a good sign. And I can confirm that we will send the slides, and we will definitely send you the links of the country sheets that Edith mentioned during her speech. But let me go back to our publication of today. So in my opinion, when we're talking about European statistics and we see the historical data of the European biogases, this reminds us of a remarkable journey that the European biogas community has undertaken in the past years. This is a story of innovation, first of all, and EU-made innovation, sustainability, and also system resilience. The report that we are launching today provides data and insight on the biogases market and their co-product, and it offers also a panoramic view of the most important trends. You see here in the slides the main chapter. So this year, the publication is divided in 7 chapters and covers production trend, but also technological innovation, regulatory landscapes and how they impact on market, and also nutrient recycling. But what is the novelty of this year? So we were really mindful of the challenge that we have ahead, that Edith explained us very well. And we have dedicated a new chapter to biogases economics, but also expanded our analysis on digestate potential, contribution towards climate change mitigation, and the new technologies for post-treatment of digestate as well. We have also dedicated some efforts to investigate current uses of biogas and biomethane, as a strong end-use demand is absolutely pivotal in increasing also production capacity. The report, as Mike and Marina will tell you in a moment, includes also 27 in-depth country analysis to see how the different markets are in development at the moment. But before I give the floor to Marina and Mike, I would like also to hear from you, from our audience. And so I have a question for you, and I will leave a little bit of suspense because we will find out the answer, the right answer together during this webinar. So the total volumes of biogases produced in Europe is equal to the natural gas demand of Denmark, Czech Republic, Poland, and Spain. So we'll see who is the best informed at the moment. And now I will leave the floor to Mike de Corte, our technical manager, and later on to Marina Pasteris, our technical officer, who are the main authors of the 2023 EBA Statistical Report. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar. So I will start with the first section of the report, which is about mainly about the production volumes that we have in 2022. But let's first say a few words on the methodology and the scope that we are taking in our report. So in terms of geographical scope, we covered EU27, but also 6 other European countries, which are Iceland, Norway, Serbia, Switzerland, Ukraine, and the UK. In terms of data inputs, our main, let's say, information or our main data come from our National Biogas Association. So it comes from our members, but also from national statistical reports and industry stakeholders in the respective countries. We complement, let's say, this extensive data gathering with information available in our European biomethane map, but also in other EBA publications, white papers and briefings. And we also, let's say, combined it with information and knowledge that we have from our research and innovation projects in which we are involved in as EBA. Then some notes on the graphs and statistics that we are presenting today. So the graphs that we are presenting include at the moment figures until the end of 2022. And with regard to bio-CNG and bio-LNG, we are counting them towards our biomethane statistics. In terms of definitions, when we talk about BCM, we are talking about BCM natural gas equivalents. With biogas, we are referring to raw, non-upgraded gas originating from anaerobic digestion. And with biogases, in plural, we mean, let's say, the all-encompassing biogas and biomethane production combined. Then let's move further. I will start with shaping a bit the landscape that we are in at the moment in Europe. So at the moment, in 2022, we have spent more than 120 billion euros on fossil fuel subsidies, which was an increase of 120% relative to the year before. And this was in main part, let's say, a response to the energy crisis that we have known. A main reason for this increase was the protection of our EU consumers, not only households, but also the protection of our industries. We see that on the national level, we have seen more than 230 temporary measures to protect our consumers. And in 2021 and 2022 combined, this amounted to almost 200 billion euros. Then when we look towards gas imports, also there we see that the amount that we needed to spend was highly impacted with the increasing energy prices in 2022. And we saw an increase of almost 150% compared to the year before. Then I also put up the number that we have spent on renewable subsidies. This was 87 billion, which was a slight increase, let's say, to the year before, which was plus 1% relative to 2021. Then when we move further and we zoom and we zoom into natural gas consumption, and more particularly the part of our gas consumption which is imported from outside Europe. We see that in 2022, 97% of the gas that we consumed was what came from outside Europe, and in absolute volumes, this amounts to 342 BCM. This is an increase compared to 2021, in which we had a gas dependency of 83%, and 20 member states in the EU were for more than 90% dependent on importing gas. On the graph that is shown here, it actually shows the imports of selected energy products in the European Union, and the light blue line illustrates the natural gas imports. And there we can see that in the last, let's say, 25 to 30 years, we have seen a doubling of this amount that was necessary. So whereas the previous graph showed what the energy that we are importing in Europe, the one that is showing now on the screen is the energy production that we have domestically in the European Union. And we see a long-term downward trend, let's say, for most fuels, and there is one line that is continuously going up. And this is the one on renewables and biofuels. And actually, since 2016, we see that renewables are EU's biggest energy supplier, and it's still going up. And in 2021, the figures show that 41% of the energy that comes from within the EU came from renewables. So this is to frame a bit the context that we are in at the moment, before we move to, let's say, the actual production figures on biogases and the main reason why we are here today. I'll let you breathe a little bit, because a lot of figures are coming your way on the next couple of slides. In 2022, we reached a total biogases production of 21 BCM. This is biogas and biomethane production combined. To give you an idea of what this volume actually represents, this is a bit more than the gas demand of Poland. So with this, you also know the reply to the poll question that we had. And it's also equivalent to 6% of the EU gas consumption. 20% of the biogas production that we had in Europe, it's being upgraded to biomethane. And out of 21 BCM, 18 BCM is being produced in EU 27. What you can also see on this graph actually is that in the light blue, it's biogas, and in the darker blue, it's biomethane. And we can clearly see that the main part of the growth is taking place in biomethane production. This is also why on the next slide, we zoom in more into biomethane production. So on this graph, you see the increase in the last 11 years in biomethane production. And you can already see that in the last 4 to 5 years, we have seen an acceleration in the growth rate. In 2022, we had a production of 4.2 BCM, with 3.4 BCM being produced in EU 27, and an installed capacity of already reaching 4.5 BCM. In the last 4 years, so between 2018 and 2022, we saw a doubling of biomethane production, going from 2.1 to 4.2. And we had a year-on-year increase from 21 to 22 of 18%. In terms of the biggest growers, in terms of countries, we see that France, Italy, Denmark, and UK are at the moment having the largest increase in their production volumes. Going further, we have a focus on the number of plants that are going into operation, and also on this graph you can nicely see an acceleration in the new number of biomethane plants in the last 4 years. In 2022, we have more than 250 new plants entering into operation. 1,300 plants are being operational in total in Europe, of which more than 1,100 plants are operational in EU 27. We count in our database 24 countries which are producing biomethane, and we see that almost each year there were new countries which are joining the biomethane production. More than 75% of the plants are grid connected, and most plants are connected to the distribution grid. With this, I leave it in terms of, let's say, of the production data and in terms of the number of new plants. And I will give the word to Marina, who will guide us into the next section of the report.
Thank you very much, Mike. Indeed, we have seen now, thank you for presenting the volumes of biogases that are being produced in Europe. But now we have also in our report, the biogases consumption by sector, and we will have a look at this data now. But first, let me introduce a bit on in general the final energy consumption by sectors in the European Union. And we know that the total consumption in 2021 of the European Union was about 4,000 petajoules, which is more or less equivalent to 11,000 terawatt hours in total. And from this total consumption, we, as you can see in the figure on the right, 29% went to the transport. So the transport was using this percentage, then 28% was used by households, and the industry consumed around 26%. The good news is that the renewable energy sources actually are being increased from this total energy consumption over the last 30 years. And we started somewhere around less than 5% in 1990, but now we are reaching 12%. So it was reached in 2021. And among these renewable energy sources, of course, biogases are well suited to replace fossil fuels in all end uses. So in the transport, in the households and industry. We'll have a look at this data in the next slides, but then the question is, what is the percentage of biomethane used per sector? So let's have a look at the next slide, which you can see in these graphs, the percentage of biomethane used per sector. In the middle, you have the overall, but also on the right, you have per country. And around 19% was going to transport. 22% of the biomethane was used in buildings. We had the industry that used 14% of the total biomethane, and 15% was used for power generation. In the graph on the right, you can see the different profiles of the different countries. So we know they are quite diverse. So the end users actually depend on the countries, on each situation. And for example, in some countries like Italy or Norway or Sweden, the majority or almost all biomethane was used in the transport. And other profiles like Germany, for example, the biomethane was mainly used for production of heating or electricity. So these different profiles and this different balance of the end uses show how versatile biomethane is, and how that we are a valuable contribution to the decarbonization of Europe. Let's have a closer look to the transport sector. And we know that in 2022, we had already 27 bio-LNG active plants, which is the liquefied biomethane. And actually, this is increasing over the years. And we expect by 2025, we will have already more than 109 bio-LNG plants scheduled. These are projects that are confirmed. So by 2025, we are counting on a production capacity of 15.4 terawatt hours per year. And so far, we have 10 countries that are producing bio-LNG already. And I can mention Belgium, Denmark, Finland. We also have France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the UK. If we have a look on the other biogas, the other end uses for the biogases, we have, for example, that the biogases accounted for over 6% of the renewable electricity that was produced in the EU 27 in 2022. And to give you some numbers, for example, 68 terawatt hours were produced from biogas in CHP units, and almost 3 terawatt hours were produced directly from biomethane as well. We see that biogases are not only producing electricity, but they also provide flexibility and the possibility of storage for the energy system. Then in the industry, we also know that biomethane is well suited to use as a feedstock, for example, in some chemical processes, for example, or also in high temperature industrial processes. And in our report, we have some examples of who is already using this. And for example, we had information on the glass industry already using biomethane for their operations. So as well, biomethane can complement the electrification of household heatings. For example, if households implement hybrid heat pumps, and we know biomethane is actually compatible with all the existing gas-based heating systems, and it's a bit more in details in our report, but we know that we could save over 500 billion euros per year, which is not a minor sum in Europe. So I give the floor again to Mike, and we will have a look at some other data of our report.
Thank you, Marina, for the presentation. There was a question in the Q&A which I can reply immediately. So the question is, do you have data on how many of the 109 bioenergy plants are virtually producing biomethane? For this, I can confirm that our database includes the physical production of bioenergy. So it both includes when production is taking place at the biomethane production facility directly, or when it's, let's say, with the physical production of bioenergy using GOs. So moving towards the next section, achieving the 35 BCM target, growth rate, and biomethane targets. To introduce this section, we have plotted, let's say, the required growth rate to reach the 35 BCM target, together with the growth rate that we are at the moment. So let's say the required growth rate, it's the upper bar going towards 35 BCM. Then we have the middle line, which is, let's say, which has a growth rate that we have at the moment. And then we have the lower line, which is the average growth rate of the last 5 years. So the good news here is that we see that we have already accelerated our growth in biomethane production, but we also see that we need an increased ambition to reach the 35 BCM target. One of the main pillars that we need to increase biomethane production in Europe, it's planning. And one way to do this, or one tool that is supporting us with planning biomethane production, it's the governance of the Energy Union. So this governance of the Energy Union is providing a legal requirement to develop national energy and climate plans by the member states to outline climate and energy goals. And to give a bit of background and the timeline that we had in this, in December 2022, the European Commission provided a guidance and encouraged the member states on including a component on biogases and biomethane in their NECP updates. In June this year, we had the deadline for the NECP updates, and finally in December, out of 27 NECPs to be updated, 22 were already submitted. Then if we take a closer look towards what are the biomethane targets that are already in place in Europe, in 10 of the submitted NACPs, there's an actual biomethane target included directly. We see in six more European countries, they have a biomethane target, which was already what we called pre-NACP. So with this, we mean that the biomethane target was already announced on a national level in the frame of a strategy or a national roadmap, but not yet included in the NACP directly. Then we have 5 more countries which have a biogas only target, and we have 6 countries who do not yet have a target at the moment in terms of biogas and biomethane. And those countries are listed here at the bottom. These are Belgium, Bulgaria, Germany, Hungary, Portugal, and Romania. On the next 2 tables, we have listed the countries with biomethane targets. So on the left one, we have countries which have a biomethane target by 2030 included in the NACPs. And on the right-hand side, we have countries which have what we call a pre-NACP biomethane target, which is not yet included in the NACPs. So we see that we see several countries which actually have quite good targets and have put forward quite some good ambitions. So we have France with a target of more than 4 BCM. We have Italy with the ambition of 5.7 BCM, and the Netherlands also having a good target of 2 BCM at the moment. What we have done next at the EBA, we have developed a simple analysis and methodology to, let's say, to anticipate the production in 2030, which we could already have at this moment, and with the ambitions already in place. So we mapped for every country if they have an NACP biomethane target, and also if they have already an ambition which was already in place before the NACP update. And then, of course, we also know their current production. So as a methodology, we took as a first option the biomethane NACP target, as a second option the ambition which was already in place before, and as a third option the current biomethane production. When we count this together, we already arrive at 20 BCM. And the good news here is that we do see that many countries have taken on board the encouragement of the European Commission to actually include a biomethane target in the NACP. But we also see an opportunity for further acceleration in the ambition in the next 6 months. For example, we have countries such as Germany, which have quite a good biomethane potential, but do not yet have a target in place at the moment. And we also have countries such as Finland, Sweden, and Ireland, which have a biomethane ambition, but it's not yet included in the NACP yet. We also rely here on the European Commission to include, let's say, a mandatory target, the mandatory target of 35 BCM in the gas package. And then I want to conclude this section with presenting also our EBA investment outlook. For this one, we have launched this in spring, a survey to investors in biomethane, mainly among our members. And we have asked them what are their plans to invest in biomethane production between now and 2030. And we saw that almost 18 billion euros is already earmarked to be invested in biomethane production before 2030, with even an acceleration as of 2025. And with this, I give the word back to Marina to guide us through the last section of today's webinar.
Thank you, Mike. Indeed, this is our last section, but we will talk about a great product that we are also having after the biogas production. So we will cover the digested potential of the digested production in Europe. But first, let's again give an introduction to the European dependence on fertilizers imports. And we know that between 2019 and 2021, the EU 27 imported around 26 million tons of fertilizing products, which include, for example, NPK, nitrogen, and phosphate. And these numbers that are showing here corresponded to 30% of the nitrogen fertilizers consumption in total in the EU 27, 68% for the phosphorus fertilizers, and 85% for the potassium fertilizers. So we see a need, of course, of products or other alternatives for fertilizing, or at least products that have the possibility of giving these nutrients. So in this case, digestate represents a great opportunity, and we will have a look now on how much digestate is being produced from our industry. So let's have a look at that. To answer this question, we actually are presenting in the report the detailed calculations that we have produced, but let me quickly go a bit through that. So we did a consultation with EBA members and experts because we wanted a conversion factor which said how many tons of digestate in dry matter we could obtain per gigawatt hour of biogases. We did this feedstock specific. For now, we are just covering the two main feedstocks from our industry, which are agricultural residues. So for that, we have a factor, and then we have another factor for bio-wastes. After we had these two numbers, we could calculate or estimate how much digestate is Europe producing. So we took the absolute, well, total values of biogases produced. And after that, we made a calculation on the nutrients content of this digestate, and exercise also on the synthetic fertilizer displacement potential. So in Europe now, we are producing 31 million tons of dry matter digestate approximately. And if we would take, for example, into account the EU27 nitrogen demand or the fertilizers demand, we know that in absolute values, our 31 million tons of digestate have 15% of the could cover 15% of the nitrogen-based fertilizers. In absolute values, also 11% of the phosphorus fertilizers and 6% of the potassium fertilizers demand. But I'm making here the clarification of absolute values because later I will present to you also the other applications that we can have on digestate, how we can valorize our digestate, which is not only used as a biofertilizer, but we have plenty of other alternatives. So for now, let's have still a focus here. And well, if we also made this estimation, if we were replacing, for example, 15% of the nitrogen-based fertilizers demand in EU27, how much GHG reduction potential we could achieve. And actually we arrived to the number that we, in 2022, already 10 million tons of CO2 equivalent could have been saved. But taking also into account that natural gas is the main feedstock and energy source to produce synthetic fertilizers, specifically nitrogen related, if we would replace it 15%, we also could have saved already 2 billion cubic meters of natural gas. Let's have a look on the data of digestate. So we have gathered information from our members. We are still improving this each year, but here you can see in this graph that the digestate end use is actually the main end use for now. It's used as biofertilizer. Then we have a percentage that is being used as biofertilizer after upgrading, which means well, post-processing of the digestate, and other applications like biological processing, or it's being exported. In some countries, for example, the digestate is being produced mostly like not separated and is being directly applied to the soils. And we can mention here Austria, Denmark, Germany, Poland, Slovakia, Sweden, and Ukraine. And other countries are actually leading or producing more liquid form of digestate, which include Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, UK, Switzerland, and Belgium. So as I told you before, we also have to take into account the absolute values of the nutrients content of digestate, because we will be in this sense, allowing the utilization of nutrients. And here you can see a very nice figure that we have in our report. And you can see, for example, a digestate in this right part that could be separated into liquid fraction and solid fraction. And for example, we could obtain biofuels through pyrolysis or gasification of the solid fraction. The liquid fraction could go to membrane filtration, reverse osmosis, evaporation, and have different types of products at the end, which could go again to the soil. Or in the right part of the figure, digestate has also some novel uses which are being more and more investigated. And between those, we can mention, for example, the cultivation of insects, or the use of digestate as pre-treatment agent, or, for example, as for the production of biostimulants or others. So a great potential, and we are ready to use it. With this, I think we go directly to our Q&A session. I leave the floor to Julia.
Thank you, Marina. So just a second before we go to the actual Q&A, so before starting the full presentation of the statistical report, I had asked you to answer to a poll. So what is basically the total volumes of biogas produced in Europe, and whether this equals in terms of natural gas demands to Denmark, Czech Republic, Poland, or Spain. So here you see the results. Denmark, in your opinion, came first, then Czech Republic, then Poland, and Spain. But I'm happy to announce that the right answer was actually Poland, which is substantially larger than Denmark. So we're on a good route. So I will go now to the Q&A box, and I will take some of the questions live. First of all, I have seen that the question on the 50 billion euro saving came a couple of times. So Vanya is asking, what was the 50 billion euro saving in the EU from? And it came also from actually 500 billion of saving. It came also from Francesco Billi. So how did you calculate the 500 billion euro saving per year? I will open it to Mike.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, so the savings, they come from, let's say, the comparison. If you continue using the existing infrastructure that we have in Europe and combine it with electricity infrastructure, and let's say when you combine electricity and gas, you can have savings compared to when you would use electricity only. And this is, of course, because we have several sections and sectors which are hard to electrify, and in some cases, it's more you can save when you continue using forms of gas such as biomethane and hydrogen. This is actually where this calculation comes from. But we can give you more details after this webinar.
Thank you, Mika. So I will pass to the second question. Why is there such a big range in the potential presented by the literature? And this is from an anonymous attendee.
So what we see in reality, this is also in our report. So when you compare different studies, actually, when you look at a certain feedstock type, the potentials are very much alike. But where the main difference are between potential studies is the type of feedstocks that are taken on board in the calculations. So if it's, of course, logic, if certain types of feedstocks are left out, you will arrive at different results than when you have a more encompassing overview of all the potential that you could generate.
I will take another question from an anonymous attendee who's asking if you're taking into account methane and gasification in your potential numbers, and whether you're tracking the projects.
So at the moment in the potential studies that we have, gasification is generally taken on board, whereas e-methane production, not yet at the moment. This is still something that can be added on top of what are at the moment, let's say the general figures presented on biomethane potential. In terms of if we're tracking these projects, this is something that we want to start doing in EBA to, let's say, to complement our biomethane data and the nice database that we have also with information on gasification and e-methane production. So it's our ambition to do so.
Thank you, Mieke. I see a couple of questions actually regarding the biomethane map and whether we will share an updated map of biomethane plants in Europe. Marina?
Yes, we are planning already our next edition of the biomethane plan map, sorry, and we will also bring some probably a bit of dynamic to the map. We are working, and the plan is to have it at the middle of next year. So be ready for that. We will include as much information as, of course, as we can gather, and including all the different plants, biomethane plants, which are, well, these maps are becoming more and more packed, thankfully, because we have more each time more biomethane plants. So yeah, it will be available.
Thank you, Marina. Since your camera is on, I will address some questions regarding the digestate. I see that they are coming more and more. So the first one is very specific, and is from Urs Bayer, and he asks, how would the potential for nutrient recycling be changed if we included nutrient phosphorus recovery for domestic sewage sludge with improved recovery techniques?
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the question. We are trying to improve our data. Indeed, we are going to also publish a report on specifically on digestate. It's planned for next year as well, and we will amplify our for now calculations. So we are working with the task force digestate on this part, and from sewage sludge we did not take it into account for our calculations, but we will include and amplify this to all. So we hope that also the new processes and the valorization and these processes that extract all the different nutrients will impact positively, of course, on the digestate and in general the market of digestate of this product. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I see that there was also a nice comment regarding the digestate from Alexandros Ifantis, who says, I think that the contribution of biogases in fertilizer production is very underestimated, and it is key for our sector to be sustainable and competitive. EBA needs to elaborate much more on that. It's a good start this year. Thank you, Alexandros, and we take your comments very seriously, and we are working on a white paper for Q1 2024 to address this. So I see another interesting question from Niels Olem Plambeck, and I would address this to Mieke. He says, how do we ensure that the ambitious 35 BCM biomethane target will not lead to a monotonization of our agricultural landscape with energy crops and thus increasing land use conflicts with food production?
Thank you, Julia. So when we look at the studies that we have in place at the moment, we see that there are still a lot of feedstocks who are underdeployed, and for this I'm looking towards industrial wastewater, sewage sludge, bio-waste. Also now with the let's say with more and more implementation of separate collection of bio-waste in households, we also see there that there still is a good opportunity to produce biogas from this. So when you actually look at the figures, we still have a lot of potential that we can unlock without a risk of having this monetization of the agriculture landscape.
I will take a question from Andreas Graf now. He says, I noticed you didn't present data on the development of feedstock for the biomethane biogas production in detail in this year's webinar. What were the key trends? Mieke.
Yes, this indeed, we presented a graph on this last year. We did not include it only for the reason that we needed to limit the amount of graphs that we are showing, but actually the trend is similar to what we have seen last year. So we can see that the main part of the new plants are situated in the agriculture sector, and it's coming from agriculture residues such as manure and also, let's say, harvesting residues that we have, but also an increase in biomethane production from industrial wastewater, from bio-waste, and from sewage sludge, actually. But you can this graph is included in our report, so you can have a closer look.
I'll take now a question from Francesco Passetta, and I will answer this directly. So with current growth, 18% will reach within 2030 around 14 billion cubic meters instead of 35 BCM. Which actions are going to be considered by authorities to cover this gap? So first of all, Francesco, thanks a lot for the question. And I think that we need to keep in mind that the current growth rate needs to be scaled up quite aggressively. When Mieke presented today the current situation with the national energy and climate plans, I think that there is good news and also opportunities around the corner. So the good news is that plenty of member states have considered biogas and biomethane in their own strategies. And they have also included, in certain cases, pretty ambitious targets to scale up the sectors by 2030, and also in certain cases by 2035, so looking beyond the 2030 perspective. At the same time, we know that even looking at the analysis that we performed for the National Energy and Climate Plans, we're a bit short towards the 35 BCM. It's true, though, that the draft that we are analyzing are drafts, and therefore in the next month's time, there is a big opportunity for these countries to correct the trajectories that they have imagined and get to a steeper growth. So in my opinion, first and foremost, we need to take no regrets measures and include aggressive targets at national and European level, possibly. Thank you. So I will go to the next one. I see that there is also a question on the possibility to achieve the 35 BCM target, which I think I responded already. So thank you, Theo and Philippe, on this. And I will go to the next question from Anna Taylor. Is the value of selling the digestate considered in the overall price charged to a consumer of the biomethane? Mieke, Marina, who wants to take this?
Well, it's a bit still data that we have not been able to gather from our members, so somehow it's quite challenging still to gather information on digestate, and we are developing a database on this. So through questionnaires, also with the help of the biomethane industrial partnership, we have gathered some data, and it's the question you raised, if I remember correctly, was if the digestate is a cost for the biomethane. According to the answer, so it it is considered in many places still a cost for the producer, because it has to search for where to dispose it. But for others, where the market is more developed, or for example, if they have implemented drying processes, they can sell it and transport it to other countries. So what is needed from our point of view is to really develop the market for digestate, to try to work a bit more on the policy side, so it can be applied to soils. And well, definitely we will be focused on digestate next year, so we will amplify in this data as well. Thank you.
Thanks. I have also a question here on the end uses of biomethane per section. So when you show the pie on the biomethane per end use sector, a large portion is unknown. Why is this? And do you think this portion will be reduced in next reports?
Yes, certainly. So at the moment, it was this year, it was the first time that we have gathered information on biomethane end uses. Of course, when we develop this information further and when we have a continued data gathering on where the biomethane is actually being used, I'm sure that we can reduce the part of this data which is unknown, and also because countries can now, let's say, anticipate to gather this information, because we can assure we will ask it again next year. So the answer is yes, we will continue working on this, and we are working on reducing the part unknown, but nevertheless, we still wanted to include the information that we already have in our report this year.
Thank you. I will now take a question on policy from Cristina Campos. She asks how to incentivize the biomethane production in the EU with a new directive obliging a percentage minimum in the natural gas, separate biomethane from green hydrogen targets. Why there are certain countries that don't have the biomethane targets? So I will try my best, but some of these questions are a bit of a crystal ball. So the first one, how to incentivize the biomethane production in the EU. So as I was underlining in my introduction, I think that it's important on a regulatory side to have a good target and a mandatory one that can be included, and also good drivers on the end uses, so the possibility of using this. And this can create a certain, I would say, certainty for the investors. Regarding the EU directive obliging a minimum percentage in the natural gas, at the moment the trilogue negotiations are still happening for the gas decarbonization regulation. The European Parliament had proposed a mandatory target for biomethane in this context, so we will see what the co-legislator is saying. But I see Edith that is there, so I will pass it to her because I think it's also more appropriate that she takes it. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, because this is also why I put my camera on, because I would like to add something on this. On the one hand, yes, the negotiations on the gas package are still ongoing. So it really depends on what the co-legislators say, but the co-legislators have already included at least the recycling and the renewables directive, where they make it clear that the measures set out in the renewables directive to increase renewable energies also are intended to achieve this 35 BCM annual production of sustainable biomethane by 2030. So there is already a clear policy message from the co-legislator in the renewables directive that the renewables directive should also be used in this direction. And the other thing is also, I think with the biomethane action plan, okay, it's not legislation, but it's still a very clear policy guidance, a policy document from the European Commission, where we set very clear measures on how to incentivize the uptake of biomethane over the next years. So I think there's already quite a lot there. And in addition, the biomethane industrial partnership is actually doing a lot of work to define this even further. So I think there's already quite a lot there. And on the question why some member states don't have targets, there's no mandatory target. There's nobody who is obliging them to set targets. So we ask them to do so in the national energy and climate plans, in the guidance for it. We will also include in our recommendations for those who have no targets to do so. But then if they do not follow the recommendations, obviously they are not bound by it. So I just leave it at that. I could add much more, but then we have another 15 minutes. And unfortunately, I will have to leave in 2 minutes.
Thank you, Edith, for your answer. Truly appreciated. We will go now to a different subject with Theo Hertel, who asks, do you gather a target of companies for the EU, such as ENGIE, Total, etc.?
Yes, so this is something that that we can do. So in spring, we will again update our biomethane investment outlook. And this is, I think, a good opportunity in which we can also gather the targets from companies such as ENGIE, Total, and so on. So yes, thank you for this suggestion, and we can certainly take that on board.
Petteri Sa asks, will lignocellulosic feedstock be included in the biomethane feedstock report?
For more the lignocellulosic feedstocks, these are included in the gasification potentials in general. So yes, I would say that when we talk about biomethane potentials, those are already taken on board.
I think I will take the very last question here. So for Francesco Billi asks, do you have a breakdown of consumption of biogas as well?
Yes, so at the moment we consider, and this is also included in our chapter on end users in the report, that most of the biogas is being used in CHPs for the production of electricity and heat, and this is indeed also something that that we check every year with our national biogas associations. And we have some countries in which biogas is also directly being used for heat applications in industry, or for certain business cases that it makes more sense to produce heat from the biogas directly.
So I think that we can safely draw to conclusions. First of all, I would like to thank all participants for a very lively question and answer session. It's important also for us to understand what are the main data that you would like to get, and what are the questions that you have in mind, also to develop better also next edition of our statistical report. So first of all, as I said, thank you all for your interest. Thank you, Mrs. Offer, for participating as a keynote speaker. I would like to remind you that all the material that was shown today will be available to all the participants of this webinar. So you will receive this presentation and also the recording. You can always ask us questions and send us an email if something was unanswered today because of time. And also I would like to remind you that this EBA report will be free for all the European Biogas Association members, but also for policymakers. So don't hesitate to contact us on this. I would like finally to also thank our sponsors. And with this, I would close this successful webinar. Thank you very much for the interest and for all your questions. Have a nice day.